All right, Larry Kruger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little Golden State Warrior look ahead to the summer. The Warriors got bounced in the play-in by Sacramento, and they badly want to run it back with Steph Curry and figure out a way to become title contenders, at least for 1 or 2 more years with Steph. But man, the choices are going to be tough, and we'll go into a really well-written article written by Thompson from The Athletic. And I thought he did a really nice job. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then of course we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week, from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. And this video is brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles in Monterey. They're in Pacific Grove, 205 Cypress Avenue. Give them a call, Anthony Catania, 831-521-5264 for all your sports collectible needs. Well, interesting time for the Warriors for sure. And what are they going to do is the question. And, the upcoming NBA offseason is reportedly expected to be really, really busy for teams that are avoiding the brand new restrictions that are going to be imposed on the high spending franchises, of which the Warriors are one, by the NBA's new CBA. And this is according to Tim Bontemps from ESPN, who wrote a great piece this week, quoting anonymous NBA executives saying that they believe it's going to be a very active summer on the trade market for that reason. So the NBA and the Players Association agreed to a new CBA last June, and it was ratified on July 1st of 2023. Teams above that new second apron, which was set at 17.5 million above the luxury tax threshold this season, will not be allowed to aggregate contracts and trades, or use past trade exceptions, or take back more salary in trades than they send out. This is according to Yahoo, who reported this. Additionally, any team that is over the second apron at the end of the 2024-2025 season will not be permitted to move their 2032 first-round draft pick in a trade. So as of February, the Warriors, Celtics, Bucks, Suns, and Clippers were all projected to be above that second apron at the end of the season. And those teams and others potentially could look to offload a contract or two during the offseason to create opportunities. Of course, that would create opportunities for teams below the luxury tax threshold to potentially swoop in and acquire a quality player at a discounted price. So this is a summer where, LeBron's supposedly going back to the Lakers. We'll see about that. But Paul George, Klay Thompson, James Harden, Pascal Siakam, DeMar DeRozan either will be or could be free agents this offseason. And the NBA's landscape could dramatically change for that reason. So that now you enter Golden State in their situation, and they just got bounced. They are a little too young and a little too old. The only guy on their roster that was in the prime of his career was Andrew Wiggins. And now Mike Dunleavy's got to somehow put this thing back together. I mean, Joe Lacob said, hey, we're light years ahead of everybody. And we're going to find out if they really are. It's, you look at the Warriors. I mean, they were nowhere close to winning a title this year. They couldn't even beat out teams like Sacramento or the Pelicans or the Lakers or the Suns. And none of those teams are really contenders for a title. So how do the Warriors get in the mix? And what exactly can they do? Thompson writes that they got to look for their Andrew Wiggins 2.0. And clearly Golden State was not good enough this year. They weren't good enough in really any way. They struggled. Their old guys got too old. Their young guys were too young. They didn't have anybody in their prime. Basically they need to get more athletic. They definitely need to add some shooting. They need, on-ball defenders. Kerr commented on that at the end of the year. It's like, hey, man, Sacramento was all over us. Keon Ellis was in our grill. We couldn't stop him. He was just, he bothered us. So are they going to try to find more good on the ball defenders? I mean, obviously GP2 is one of the best. And Kuminga's got potential to be one of the best on ball defenders. Do they keep those guys? Do they move those guys? They don't have a first round pick. They got a late second round pick. Now I did look at NBADraft.net. They do pick in the second round. And according to the mock draft that I looked at, Creighton's Baylor Shireman is listed to go after they pick in the second round. So maybe he's available to them. I love Baylor Shireman. I think he's a tremendous shooter. I mean, he's a Klay Thompson type shooter. He's a 6'7", 2 guard who doesn't have awesome athleticism. But he's a little bit underrated off athleticism, but he's got what he does have is just the purest stroke there is in college basketball. He's just such a great shooter at 6'7". So that would be a guy that I'd really want to add. I love the combo that I saw from Duke, McLean, who's from Sacramento, Filipowski, the big man, but they're probably going late first round. So if they could, if the Warriors could do something and acquire a pick somewhere between 18 and 25, maybe they could get one of those two guys. That would be another piece. I think Filipowski's a young center who's got definite ability to pass and move, and he plays with some fire. Pretty athletic, can shoot the ball a little bit. He's exciting. McLean is a combo guard. He's a 6'3". Is he a point? Is he a 2? He's probably kind of an undersized 2, but he can flat out shoot it. And he's a NorCal guy. He's from Sacramento. I'm sure the Kings would love to have him. But those three guys are the three guys that I think have skill in the draft that maybe they could try to aim to pick up. But they're not going to the playoffs next year because of Filipowski or McLean or Shireman. They're going to have to go do something much more than that. They're going to have to make trades and figure this thing out. They definitely need to get more athletic. They definitely need to shoot better. They definitely need to have more athletes on the ball defenders. If you look at the best teams in the NBA, they're, as Thompson points out, they're long, they're athletic, and they're swarming on defense. They have size. They don't have holes in the middle. Golden State's a small team. They're an older team, and what are their options actually going to be? That's the question. So Thompson goes into a bunch of different options, and I mean, some of them I think are realistic. Others probably are not very realistic. But let's just go through what's potentially out there. He says they need Wiggins 2.0, which is basically a really talented player that his existing team got tired of and needed a new lease on life and a change of scenery. And once he got that change of scenery, he gave Golden State a couple really good years, and they were able to fold him in, to what they did, and they won a title with Andrew Wiggins rebounding the basketball. So I don't know if they're, the Warriors don't have a lot to offer. They don't have money under the cap. They can't sign free agents. They already have their culture set by their veterans, so there's nobody who's going to come in and set their own culture. You're going to adapt to their culture. For one of these veterans that could sign as a ring-chasing veteran for nothing, and there's just too many other teams that are in front of them in the chase for that ring, that if you really wanted to chase a ring, you probably wouldn't sign with Golden State. So what do they do? And what do they have to offer? Well, Marcus brings up a good point. What they have to offer is minutes and shots, and they're an iconic franchise. And if all of a sudden you could rekindle your game and play next to Steph and get into the playoffs, you could find yourself in a very, very good position if you're a young player that combines with Steph and comes out here. But still, how's Golden State going to make it work? I'm not in a rush to trade Jonathan Kuminga or Trace Jackson Davis or Pajemski. Moody, I think I would consider moving, but he's really the only young piece that I would consider moving. So what do they even have to trade? They have Wiggins, who is not highly coveted, possibly Chris Paul's $30 million expiring if they found the right kind of piece to the puzzle. But that probably is a long shot. I mean, let's be totally honest about this as Warrior fans. They're kind of screwed. It's not like they're like, oh, they got all kinds of options. No, they don't have all kinds of options. They have very few options. Maybe they can do what I said they should do and Go find a Baylor Shireman or a McLean or a Filipowski or somebody like that in the draft. Add a rotation player on the down low, like they did this year with Trace Jackson Davis and Pajemski. They've got that move available, but does that elevate them from, team that get bounced by Sacramento in the play-in to a title contender? No. So the names that he throws out are interesting names. The first one he throws out is Zach LaVine. Now, LaVine doesn't play any D, but LaVine is in Chicago. He makes a boatload of cash. And maybe you could make a deal where you could move Wiggins and Paul and multiple number ones and get LaVine coming back. And maybe LaVine with the Warriors kind of, gets motivated, gets healthy, and, has this great next chapter to his NBA career. I know a lot of people going, come on. No, not Zach LaVine. He doesn't play any D. And, he's wearing out his welcome in Chicago. And, he's a above the rim guy who's now had some injuries. And, and I understand all that. And you guys are all right about all those negative thoughts about LaVine. He was injury plagued all this year. But once again, the Warriors don't have great options. This is a player who potentially is gettable. He has big money on his deal. Joe would have to be willing to spend big money into the future for LaVine. It's a roll of the dice. I mean, it really is a roll of the dice, but he's probably gettable. He's probably a guy you could bring in. So he's one guy that I think they ought to consider because he's gettable. He's athletic. He's fun to watch. He would put butts in the seats. Maybe he would rekindle his career with the Warriors the way Wiggins did. So that's an interesting name. But you have to eat $138 million over the next 3 years. So it's a Joe Lacob question. Does Joe Lacob want to take on $138 million in the form of Zach LaVine over the next 3 years? Probably not. Probably not. All right, let's go to the next guy Marcus puts down on the list, Brandon Ingram. Now, Brandon Ingram seems like he's been around forever, but he's only 27. And he had a rough postseason. He wasn't good. A lot of talk that they don't want him anymore. He's very talented. He's a mid-range guy. He's not a three-point guy. He's not a dominant big by any stretch. But maybe they would consider moving him. He's got a year left and $38 million left on his deal. And then after that, he's going to probably want a big deal. In a way that kind of carrot dangling type player might be what the Warriors need, right? Because you want to have Ingram have a big year. And is he going to have a big year in his walk year? Probably. So if you could make a deal with the Pelicans and get Brandon Ingram, that would be attractive. Then the third name he throws out there is DeJounte Murray, who's going to be 28 this year. He's coming off of his best year as a professional. He's not a great shooter. He wasn't a good fit on his team opposite Trae Young. Would he be a good fit on the Warriors? I don't know. He would make them kind of small in the backcourt. I just don't. He's signed an extension that hasn't even started yet. So, I mean, he's got huge money coming his way. He signed a 4-year, $120 million contract that doesn't even begin until next season. So, I mean, he's making a ton of cash. He's kind of smaller. I mean, I think he's gettable. I think you could probably make a deal with the Hawks and get him. But is he going to do anything for the Warriors? I don't think so. I mean, is he going to be that much better than what they already have? Is he going to make a market difference? I mean, for that kind of taking on that kind of a sizable commitment financially for DeJounte Murray, I don't see it. Then Marcus throws out Miles Turner, but why are the Pacers moving Miles Turner? They're building this title contending team. He's starting to, he's played well for them. They finally have a team that's going somewhere. I mean, I don't see him being available. I just don't. No, I mean, he's a big man who can shoot and, 6'11", athletic. Then he throws out Lauri Markkanen. And in a lot of ways, Lauri Markkanen's the perfect player for the Warriors. 7-footer, doesn't turn 27 until next month. Kerr probably love him because he went to Arizona. He's an all-star. He can shoot the ball. He can play off the ball. He can pass. He's getting smarter and better as a player. He can score. He's not a great defensive player, but he's a terrific player. Now, it would take definitely it would take Kuminga, probably Trace Jackson Davis as well. And Danny Ainge he loves making trades where they're very one-sided in his favor. So he would probably try to rip you off for 3 number ones or some bevy of number ones. And then you got to ask yourself, is Lauri Markkanen, even at 27, 28, is he going to move the needle that much? I mean, he would probably be the only guy that I see on this list that I would actually consider moving Jonathan Kuminga for, because Kuminga is such a great athlete and such a bright future, and he's only 21. But if you could get Markkanen, maybe you could get Markkanen for Kuminga and draft capital and something to make the money work. Maybe Kuminga and Looney and draft capital. Maybe you could get Lauri Markkanen, and maybe that would be worth it. Maybe that would be worth it. And then he goes into the old crew. Paul George. I just read Paul George is going to go back to the Clippers, and he's 30. He's 34, coming up on his 34th season. Could the Warriors work a sign and trade? I guess, but they'd have to throw a lot of money their way. And do they want Wiggins? Probably not. So I don't see that one. Kevin Durant is a name that's being thrown out. Now, do the Suns want to move Kevin Durant? I don't know. I mean, if Kevin Durant said he's got a lot of clout as a player. If he said, "Hey, I want to be a Warrior," and left them with no choice but to give him to the Warriors, and maybe the Warriors could move some package of players back there. But I don't think I think the rules prohibit Chris Paul from being on the Suns this year. So I don't think you could move Paul. So then you got to move Wiggins, and then you got to find other salaries to make it work, because KD makes a lot of money. And I just don't know if the salaries could work. And do you want to do this? Do you want to do the rekindling of Durant when we know Durant's kind of a nomad wanderer? It's been 5 years since he was last here. You got the bad vibes with Draymond. You had the way he kind of challenged Kerr. Suddenly old KD, who's more banged up, can be better here. That's hard to envision. I think it's an exciting thing to think about. And it seems like the ultimate shortcut to get the Warriors back into title contention. But then you got to ask yourself, is KD at this point, with Steph at this point, with what they would have left, is that a title contending team? Or is that a team that, on paper looks like they could contend for a title, but really couldn't? So I don't know if that works. Then there's DeMar DeRozan, and he's, mid-30s, and what has he got left? And, I know he would love to be in LA because he's an LA guy, but does he want to be here in the Bay Area? I don't know. And then, of course, the home run ball. I mean, if you can get Giannis to demand a trade to the Warriors or something like that, or Joel Embiid to demand a trade to the Warriors, some back channels negotiation through Steph, and maybe you could make something work that way. But that's it. That's kind of a wrap on all the options. So what's the best option there? I guess the best option is Giannis tells the Bucks, "I want to be a Warrior and I won't play anywhere else, and you got to trade me there." And they make some kind of deal under duress and send Giannis to the Warriors. And Giannis becomes the partner to Steph, and then when Steph retires, Giannis becomes the big fish, I guess. That's the home run ball. Okay. And who knows? Maybe it's viable. I have no idea. I have no idea what kind of clout Steph Curry has with Giannis, and how the pressure points of how this could go down. DeRozan to me seems too old. Durant to me seems too old. Paul George to me seems too old. I just don't think those are viable options. I really don't. I know Paul George seems like it could fit, but I don't see that. Markkanen would be awesome, but I mean, why is Danny Ainge trading you Lauri Markkanen, in his prime? And is he going to do it without just decimating the entire team? And if you decimate the entire team and give him all your young assets, are you that much appreciably better than you are right now? I don't know. Miles Turner is a good name and a good idea. I don't think he's going anywhere. So, it's like, what's left? And it's just not, there's not a ton left there as far as options for Golden State. So, DeJounte Murray, don't like that option at all. I think probably the best options. I mean, if you can, the number one option would be like, hey, get Giannis to demand a trade to the Warriors and cut off the Bucks at the kneecaps, and but that's just such a long shot. That's like that's the that is literally the shot from the baseline, on the opposing baseline. You're just throwing up a gigantic prayer. I think probably the best option is to keep doing what you're doing in the draft, which is, try to acquire a second round pick, maybe another one. See if you can get a guy like Shireman, who's got a developed skill set and ready to contribute. See if you could get a late first round pick and get one of those Duke players to add to your rotation. And maybe you make a big trade for Levine. I would try it. I would try it. I think I would prioritize Ingram first and then Levine, but I'd be okay with Levine. And see if you could, maybe you make a trade with one of your other veterans and you try to find a couple younger pieces to the puzzle. I think what we're seeing here more than anything is that Golden State is in a rough spot. They got the league, basically changing the rules to make it very difficult for them to run it back. They're sitting there in a bad spot as far as their cap. They don't have a first round draft choice. They only have a late second. They don't have a lot of tradable assets. The ones they do have that are tradable, they want to keep. Are we starting to get the picture of why Bob Myers took off? It wasn't just that Joe Lacob was a gigantic pain in the ass. It was that this thing is going to be really, really hard to pivot and move on from, and get them in any kind of competitive category by next year. It might be borderline impossible. So there you go. Great piece by Marcus Thompson in The Athletic. I would encourage you all to go read it. I would say the best options are, possibly some kind of a deal for Brandon Ingram or Zach LaVine. Maybe they can find a rotation player or two via the draft. Maybe you can make one trade that could, you might be able to get a rotation player or two that kind of turns your thing over a little bit and gives you a little bit more depth. But I think where they're at is they're right now they were, lost in the play-in round. Even if they could make the kinds of moves that I'm discussing, I still think they're in that 5-6 range and outside the title contender category. And only something unforeseen like a Giannis or a, KD or something like that could vault them into that, 3-4 range. And even then, outside borderline title contenders. So it's going to be a tough offseason for Mike Dunleavy. Very, very tough offseason. It's going to be really, really interesting to see what moves he does make and how they go about mapping this thing out. I'll say this with total authority. If the Warriors are a title contender next year, Joe Lacob and Mike Dunleavy are light years ahead of the rest of the NBA. That's what it's going to take. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor. And this video is brought to you by our newest sponsor, Aura. Now a word from Aura. Have you ever typed your name on the internet and seen all of your private information is online? Are you tired of receiving tons of spam calls from random numbers? Are you receiving more and more of these as time has gone on? Well, that's where Aura, the sponsor of today's show, can really help you out. Data brokers sell your information to scammers and spammers and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, your email, your home address, all your records, your health records, who your relatives are. It's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use the information to help them access my social media accounts, my bank accounts, or any other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats I can't see. I get other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more without having to download several different apps. It's really easy to set up. And best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to the link in the description to start your 2-week free trial. And thanks to Aura for being a sponsor of this video. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.